To the Baltimore City Council. My name is Jim Kraft. I'm the chairman of the Judiciary and Legislative Investigations Committee. We're here this evening to hear City Council Resolution 150200R. Before I tell us exactly what that is, I'd like to recognize to my far left the Dean of the Baltimore City Council, Councilwoman Ricky Spector, in the 5th District. To my immediate left, member of the committee, Councilman Bill Henry from the 4th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
To my far right, Mr. Paul Plymouth representing the President of the Baltimore City Council, Bernard Jack Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
To my immediate right, Ms. Marguerite Murray, staff to the committee, representing the Mayor of the City of Baltimore, Ms. Angela Gibson. Good evening, Ms. Gibson. And we'll introduce other people as we go along through the evening. If you have with you any electronic devices that are going to beep or whiz or sing a song or anything like that over the next hour or so, please be so kind as to turn them off. This hearing is being broadcast on TV 25, so they will be heard by everyone that's watching. They will interrupt whoever is speaking, and they interfere with the ability of the committee to hear the testimony. So please be so kind as to do that. If you feel that your electronic device is beeping and you need to respond to it, please step outside of the chambers and do so. Okay. We have a note also from Councilwoman Clark, the vice chair of the committee. Councilwoman Clark is engaged in a community meeting in her district this evening and is unable to join us, so she is excused from this evening's meeting. That's correct. Okay. So this is Council Resolution 150200R, and we are also being joined by Councilman Warren Branch from the 13th District, a member of the committee. And this is a council resolution concerning an investigative hearing valet parking program for the purpose of calling on representatives from the Departments of Finance, Transportation, Parking Authority of Baltimore City, the BMZA, and the Baltimore City Police Department to appear before the council to report on the implementation of the valet parking program created by ordinance in 2013, as well as revenue generated thus far as a result of the law, including but not limited to application fees, licensing fees, and citations issued for businesses that are not in compliance. Ladies and gentlemen, the valet program, parking program, as you know, is something that we had been talking about for a number of years. And tried to get it started, couldn't get it started, and former Councilman Cole, myself, Mr. Little, Mr. Auchincloss, all worked very diligently over really a couple of years to come together with an ordinance, which we have now and which we believe is a good ordinance. The question is how well the ordinance is being enforced. And so we really want to talk about the implementation and the enforcement of the ordinance, because my district, along with now Councilman Costello's district, we probably have the most people that are using the valet service or subject to the valet service. So
by volume. We're not measuring this problem by volume.
But we do want to have an opportunity to go through and get people's questions answered and actually try to solve a couple problems here this evening, if we can, before we leave. So the bill was referred to a number of agencies, and I'm going to try to knock a couple of them out real quickly, and then we're going to hear from Mr. Little. What I'd like to do, folks, is this. I'd like to go through the reports that really they're just saying we agree that you should have the hearing, And then I'd like to have Mr. Little make his entire presentation before we do any questions and answers with Mr. Little. So as Mr. Little is making his presentation, if you just make notes, and then we'll take his question. Councilwoman Spector. If someone would take the councilwoman's microphone from her, not that she needs it.
Don't take my call.
Okay, so we have a report from the Law Department dated February 24th, 2015, from Mr. Petros stating that this is a proper forum for us to have a hearing. Mr. Petro, you have anything to add?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have a letter from the Planning Department dated January 20th, 2015, stating that they're supportive of the valet parking program in general, and they defer to those agencies who are directly affected by the bill. Planning have anything to offer?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. We have a report from Environmental Control Board, and we're going to hold on them for a minute. We have a report from the Parking Authority, and we're going to hear from Mr. Little momentarily. We have a report from Department of Transportation, and we're going to hold on them for a little bit. BDC, we have a report saying that they are support of the resolution for the investigative hearing, and they believe that the valet program is a key part, a tool in helping with the development of the city. Anybody from BDC have anything to offer to that? You have anything to offer? No? Okay. All right, we have a letter from the Downtown Partnership, which says that they have not been made aware of any significant problems or potential improvements that could be made to the valet parking program. Who's here from the Downtown Partnership? Anybody? Ms. Gibson, when we get finished this hearing, would you make sure you send some notes to Mr. Oh, this was Mr. Evans, it wasn't Mr. Fowler, so that he can learn about these potential problems and improvements that can be made to the program?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We have a letter from the Police Department. We'll be talking with the Police Department in a little while. We have a letter from the BMZA supporting the passage of the bill dated February 24th. Mr. Tanner, you have anything to add to your letter?
No, other than any questions that come up today.
Okay. And we have a letter from the Department of Finance stating that the parking fees for garages include year-to-date collections of $2,736 and reflects the valet parking activity. We'll talk to them in a little while also. So at this point, let's hear from Mr. Little. I'd like to take this.
Good afternoon, Chairman Kraft and council members. The Parking Authority of Baltimore City is proud of, first, I'm Peter Little, Executive Director with the Parking Authority of Baltimore City. Sorry, I almost forgot. The Parking Authority is proud of its accomplishments in administering the valet parking regulations. We welcome this opportunity to present our accomplishments, to detail current action items, and to outline future goals of the valet regulations program. First, it's important to understand the history of valet parking regulation in Baltimore City. Prior to enactment of the valet parking bill, there was absolutely no regulation of valet parking operations. Over the years, we, and that's the Parking Authority, and myself personally, received dozens of complaints about valet parking from valet customers, residents, community associations, and from valet companies themselves that were concerned about the bad practices of rogue valet operators. The concerns included valet operators that were not properly insured in the event that they damaged the customer's vehicle, customers who had their vehicles stolen by someone posing as a valet, valet speeding, running red lights or stop signs, or driving the wrong way down one-way streets, valets blocking traffic on neighborhood streets, and valets parking cars on-street and not in off-street parking facilities. There was little to nothing we could do about these concerns because there was no law, regulation, or rule to regulate valet operators and valet operations. The Parking Authority could have ignored concerns, but we did not. The Parking Authority understood that well-managed valet parking operations are essential to the city because they help to better utilize off-street parking supply, particularly in areas where on-street parking is in high demand. Valet can and should be a parking solution, marrying parking demand at its source with parking supply that may be several blocks away. We met, and that's again the Parking Authority, met as a team and asked ourselves, what can we do about this situation? How can the city regulate valet operations to prevent abuses while allowing valet to continue to provide another parking solution? In 2005 and 2006, we researched what other municipalities had done or were doing to regulate valet operations. We met with valet operators, restaurants, and hotels that relied on valet to meet the parking needs of their customers, community associations, merchants associations, and other city agencies that had dealings with valet operators. We put together an outline of a program that we thought could work to address the valet parking concerns without undue burden on valet operators and venues that need valet parking that could cause them to possibly abandon valet operations. Based on that outline, the Parking Authority, with the assistance of legislative reference, drafted legislation to regulate valet parking in Baltimore City. The legislation, Bill 070803, was introduced at City Council through the administration in 2007, and although we lobbied hard for it, the bill did not gain traction with City Council. The Parking Authority persevered. After tweaking the legislation some, it was reintroduced at City Council as Bill 080193 in 2008, but there was still not enough support from council members to realize passage. Over the next 4 years, the Parking Authority did not lose hope that an effective valet regulation bill could be passed. We continued to hone the bill. We established a budget for the administration of the program. We developed rules and regulations for the program. We determined a fee structure that would cover the costs of administering the program, and we continued to work to get the bill reintroduced. Finally, in 2012, we garnered the support of then Councilman Cole and Councilman Kraft in reintroducing valet regulation legislation for a third time. The bill was again tweaked through council hearings, work sessions, and the amendment process, and the bill was passed by City Council and enacted in late 2013. Once enacted, we had much more work to do. We began by hiring the team to administer this new law. It took some time to find the right people, and in fact, the initial program manager did not work out. We then transferred a very effective manager from another section of the Parking Authority to the valet regulations section in order to move the program forward more quickly. We set up office space, purchased and installed equipment, we purchased computers and supplies for the section. And none of that work happens overnight or without significant effort, but we got it done. And we learned from our efforts in 2007 and 2008 that creating this section before the law was enacted was premature and ambitious because there was the distinct possibility of wasting time and money if we had done it earlier. We established an aggressive timeline for implementation of the program in 10 geographic phases across the city. Our approach to implementation in each phase has been as follows. Number one, to inventory valet operators and valet parking operations in the phase area. Number two, to notify valet operators and valet operations or the venues in the phase area of the new law, the rules and regulations of the program, and the applications process. 3, to accept applications and application fees for valet operators' licenses and valet parking zone permits in the phase area. 4, to carefully review the applications and attend hearings on applications. 5, to recommend to the Baltimore City Department of Transportation award or denial of licenses and permits. And then 6th, to assess use of right-of-way fees to applicants awarded valet parking zone permits. We set up and implemented the full program citywide in about 1 year, an impressive achievement I attribute to the hard work and intellect of the team members in that section and the strong support of other team members at the Parking Authority and in other agencies who helped with the program's establishment and who continue to aid in its administration. We began administering the program as expeditiously as practicably possible. We assessed fees as we took in applications in each phase area and not throughout the city immediately after enactment of the law because of practicality and fairness. Assessing fees immediately upon enactment of the law was not possible because we simply didn't know who all of the valet operators and what all of the valet venues were because we hadn't had the time to hire staff yet. Sorry. Furthermore, assessing fees immediately upon enactment of the law would not have been fair, because we would have only levied those fees on the valet operators and operations that had stepped forward and identified themselves before enactment of the law. And those who had not done so would only have been assessed the fees later. So in essence, we would have punished those operators and operations that had done the right thing by identifying themselves before enactment of the law by assessing those fees earlier. We have been and will continue to be transparent in our work in valet operations and regulations, We have a full page on our website dedicated to the valet regulation program. On it are links to lists of current and pending valet operators licenses and current and pending valet parking zone permits. All 4 lists are updated twice per week. We also have downloadable applications for valet operators licenses and valet parking zone permits to make it easy for valet operators and valet venues to apply. The rules and regulations for the program are also available through a download on that website. And if anyone has a complaint about a valet operator or a valet operation, they can submit their complaint directly through the website as well. Because the Parking Authority is a quasi-governmental agency and our team members are not city employees, we cannot legally issue citations under the Valet Regulations Code. So the Parking Authority has been working diligently and persistently with several city agencies to identify who has the authority and the capacity to issue those citations. We have finalized an agreement with the city's finance department that would designate hours for their code enforcement officers to issue the valet regulation violation citations, and we expect that they will begin to issue citations within the next 2 weeks. Our goals for the valet regulation program remain as follows. Number 1, to effectively regulate valet operations throughout the city so as to prevent abuses. Number 2, to advise valet operators and venues offering valet parking on the valet application process and the effective and safe management of valet operations. Third, to take concerns about valet operators and operations from valet customers, residents, other businesses, or anyone else, to investigate those concerns, to discuss those concerns with valet operators, and to work with the city's Department of Finance and the city's Department of Transportation to cite violations. We know we have developed, implemented, and are now administering an effective, common sense, and fair process for regulating valet parking while allowing valet services to continue to be part of the parking solution here in Baltimore City. We know that without the hundreds of hours of hard work and the perseverance of the Parking Authority over the past several years, there would still be absolutely no valet regulation. We will continue to tweak the valet program to make it increasingly effective for all constituents, but we are confident in our strong team and established foundation already. Thank you.
You want to
I
start?
don't have any questions.
Okay. All right. Mr. Little, my concern, and it's my main concern for calling this hearing, is a continuing problem with enforcement. And, you know, we have, and I will use Elite as my example, okay? Elite is listed as the valet company for, let me think, for Aldo's Restaurant. And they are registered to the Fleet and Eden Street Garage. So it's my understanding that under the way the law works, that when a business, Aldo's Restaurant, would enter into its agreement with the valet company, Elite, to valet its cars to the lot, in this case, the Fleet and Eden Street Garage, that's what the agreement is under the valet law, that when they take their cars they're authorized to take them, they're authorized to collect the money, and then they are authorized to, and they have to park them in that garage.
Right, what the law says is that they have to have a parking facility, an agreement with a parking facility at which they can park those vehicles.
Okay, and so that's the agreement, that's the parking facility at which they have the agreement,
Yes.
or with which they have the agreement.
Is it Fleet and Eden or Little, with Fleet and Eden?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So we have, I mean, we have a civilian who has numbers, but Aldo's Restaurant, if you go over there, even tonight, you will see them driving cars away as people pull up and they drive their cars. And if you go there on the weekend, you will see cars backed up waiting for them to get that. Okay? And yet, in terms of the valet usage of the Fleet and Eden Street garage by Elite, in June of 14, they put no cars in there. In July of 14, they put no cars in there. In August of 14, they put one. In September of 14, they put 6. In October of 14, they put 6. November of 14, they put 5. December of 14, they put 3. And January that just passed, they put 3. Now, on any given night, if we added up all those numbers together right there, there were 24 over 8 months. I would venture if you went down there on Saturday night, they probably took 24 cars out from in front of there just on Saturday night. Okay? So obviously, they are not parking the cars on the lot to which they're registered, right?
Yep.
Okay, so first question is, what do we do to them? I mean,
Well, I can tell you what we have done already.
Okay.
And what, we're in the process of doing as well, because we have identified them as an operator that's not operating within the regulations currently, and have been in communications continuously over the past several months to provide them with warnings that they're in violation. We've observed some of those instances as well, too, and we have seen the statistics. So what we can do as well is to warn them of the violations. Other actions that we can take and that we've warned them that we might take as well, too, are to pull their valet operator's license, to rescind that, which would in essence mean that they can't conduct valet operations in the city at all. And then, now that we have this agreement in place with finance to issue the citations, would cite them as well, too.
well, there's a section of the code which allows the, I don't have anybody here from Health Department tonight. There's a section of the code which states that if you are in violation of any city regulations, and it lists a whole line of areas, if you have received a citation or whatever, and you are in violation of that, that the health department has the right not to renew your license. So, we'd like to do something more than just warn these people over and over again. I mean, it makes no sense to have a valet law if, when the people don't follow it, all they do is get a warning and say you got to follow it, or a warning and say you got to follow it. Now, we could amend the law and say that, after the first offense, it's a fine, or, it's a fine within a certain amount. After a second offense, it's a fine. After a third offense, it's a mandatory fine, and then we could tie it to licensing or something like that if we wanted to do that. I don't know that we want to go that far at this time, but we need to have a tool, particularly in places like Little Italy, where we know for a fact that these guys are just parking the cars on the street. I mean, we know
Yeah.
that.
Well, and I think they're really at their final warning at this point. So infractions beyond this will very likely lead to pulling their valet operator's license for the operator, possibly pulling the valet parking zone that Aldo's has as well too. And then if they were to continue to operate despite pulling of that license and the permit, to issue citations to them as well too on top of it on a daily basis. But it's good to know that there is the other option regarding the health permits as well.
Now, who is issuing the citations? I mean, who literally is issuing the citations now? Is it?
Well, we have an agreement with Finance Department. We're waiting on the citation booklets at this point, but we've trained 3 of their enforcement officers, and the 3 enforcement officers will be issuing the citations.
Well, can the police department issue citations for violation of this? I mean,
This is the first I've heard that citations are going to be issued. The law doesn't provide for any type of citation to be issued for violations of this particular code provision. I mean, the only citation authority that we have in the city is the civil citation process, the ECB process, and there's a limited number of code violations that can be enforced by a criminal citation. I'm looking at the code with respect to the valet parking program. I don't see it being listed as being enforceable by civil citation or ECB citation. If I'm missing something, let me know. But
I can't hear you.
if I'm missing something, let me know, but I don't see that there's any place in the valet parking law that provides for enforcement by citation. Is it in there?
We had a letter from Miss Landis about over a year ago saying that citations
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
can be issued
wrong.
per it's to Mr. Rhodes.
I'm sorry, I'm wrong. I'm wrong. It is in there for ECB. And
Going
yeah.
from ECB.
There is an ECB process, and there's a criminal penalty provision, but that doesn't mean that a criminal citation can be issued.
So that means the police department could issue the citation?
Yes, but yes.
Okay. So we have the police department, right, who can issue a citation. So now we know they can issue a citation. We have the ECB.
I have to check on that because it could be that the police can enforce if someone presses charges for violation of the code provision. I'm not sure it is under our list of code provisions that are enforceable by a criminal citation. I don't think it is.
Well, can we, we've been asking for an answer to this question for about 2 or 3 years.
Well, I'm not aware of it. No one has asked me, but
Well, I got an email here that was a chain of emails that were going back and forth between Mr. Rhodes, Mr. Tavala, Ms. Landis, going back as far as January of 2014 regarding this issue.
okay, well, unfortunately, they did not CC me on that. But what did they say?
But I think, not to interrupt, but we've identified an organization and enforcement officers who have the ability and the capacity to issue the citations.
I'm sorry?
We have identified now with the Finance Department here, officers who do have the ability and the capacity to issue the citations. And at this
So-
point, it's just a matter of getting the citation books.
Okay, Dr. Voorhees, tell us in the Finance Department who it is.
Councilman Kraft, this is the first I've heard of this agreement, so I'm sort of in the blind on this. I know we do have inspectors that inspect for building permits. There's 4 of them citywide. And I don't know how they could possibly be effective in doing this. I don't know what the agreement is, though, so I've never heard anything about it.
That's why we're all in the same room at the same time.
Yeah, no. It was, our memorandum of understanding with the Department of Finance has been executed and with Director Raymond as well, too, in order to provide that service.
Well, let's have another voice heard from here. Department of Transportation, what about Colonel Kason's folks? I see Colonel Kason back here. Do they have authority to do this? Because I know if we say to Colonel Kason, your people have the authority to do this, all we need to do is tell her, and her folks are going to take care of it. Nobody better get in their way.
So there are a couple issues here. So there are a lot of violations in this law that are subject to citation, right? And traditionally, the parking control agents, they issue criminal parking citations. So if somebody parks in a valet parking zone and they're parked there for too long and they're obviously not waiting for valet, we can issue a citation to that vehicle, to that registered vehicle for violating a parking restriction. If someone is the issue with this, however, is it goes to the vehicle, right? It goes to the registered owner of the vehicle. I think a lot of times the violations we're talking about today that we're concerned about, it's the valet operator, or it's the restaurant, or it's the licensee.
Correct.
And it would not be just to target the vehicle owner if somebody comes, drops off their car, right? And then the valet operator doesn't bring it to the garage that they agreed to bring it to. So that brings us to the next level of violation enforcement, which would be the Environmental Control Board, the environmental citation allowance in here. I understand that the Parking Authority and Finance are working on that. That's something we are also working on. I know we've been a little slow on it, and I apologize for that.
Well, here's the thing, and I guess, and let's use autos since we're picking on them, okay? Because we have the statistics and we can back up what we're saying, okay? So you pull up, I pull up my car in front of autos, right? And Joe the jockey gets in my car and he drives it around to Fawn Street and parks it on Fawn Street, right? Which is not the Fleet and Eden Street garage, okay? And I see him park it on Fawn Street, and I see one of your folks, or I see a police officer, or I see somebody, and I say, hey, this is a valet operator. He's supposed to be parking my car in the Fleet and Eden Street garage. He just parked it here, and he's gone up to get another car. Who has the authority to stop that guy and say, give me your driver's license, you are a valet driver, operator, whatever, we're issuing you a citation for a violation of the valet parking law because you just parked a car that you picked up on the street. Who can do that?
Finance Department investigators, as we've mentioned before. And how it'll happen is we're the ones at the Parking Authority who are getting the
Let me
complaints.
say this,
We'll
with all
target
due
those
respect, the Finance Department investigator is not going to be on the street in Little Italy at 11:30 on a Friday night.
They will be, the agreement calls for that, for Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights for them to be there, and that will direct them to those locations where we know that the abuse
Pete,
is happening.
This is real life. That's not going to happen. I mean, it's not going to happen. We can't get the zoning administrator, whose job it really is, to go out and enforce zoning at nighttime. We can't get them to do it, and that's their job. You know, we're not going to get a Finance Department person to come out and be working. Who's going to pay them overtime? Is that in your budget, Dr. Voorhees?
Pardon?
Who's going to pay them overtime? Is that in your budget?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Yes, sir. You want to get a microphone? You can just hand him one. They're live.
Mine often works.
Yes, sir. Hi, I'm William Marcus, Major Marcus, formerly of the Central District. Now I'm the acting commander of Area 3, which is the Central District, Southeast District, and Southern District. How are you today, sir? The resolution, as I see it, as it stands right now, the short-term answer, which may also be the long-term answer, and I'm a rookie, as I said, I've only been here for 2 weeks, so go easy on me, would be for them to have a contact person so that if we roll up on the scene and see this violation occurring, we can contact them if this is feasible and acceptable. We can contact somebody from your office and resolve the problem that way. Is that a feasible solution to the short-term problem?
If we had the ability to have the police in contact with the parking authority or something, that would be, if you had the police officers working with you, that would be a tremendous asset.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Councilman Henry?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. What I was going to suggest is we have had some success with this dealing with a different kind of problem, but the same general concept where the people who are empowered to write the violation notices, the housing inspectors, are never there at the time when the incidents are happening, which is we're dealing with college parties on Friday and Saturday nights. And what we worked out with code enforcement was that they were willing to write the citation after the fact using an incident report from a Baltimore City police officer as the prima facie evidence. So if the police department will write incident reports when they see these occurrences, and because you guys are 24/7, if anyone is out there seeing this happening, they could, in theory, and this is where we might want to make sure that high-level discussions occur between the council and the police department to ensure that this is treated as a priority, that when 911 calls for these crimes are received, an officer can come out, and if they witness it happening, they can write an incident report, they can stop the valet, get all the information, and then just write the incident report, and then everybody goes back to what they were doing, and that incident report just has to make it over to the finance department, where somebody in the finance department is empowered to write this the citation.
So, sir, the report should say on it, copy to.
I'm sorry.
We couldn't hear you.
Can't hear you.
I'm sorry. So the report should have written on it, copy to PABC, or copy
What we have found is it is its own sort of negotiated issue to figure out how the police report gets to the administrative office where the citation
We can
is
work
written.
with you to determine that flow.
Let me say this. We can't mandate that the police department do anything. We can ask them, right? We know that discussion, Major, right? So we can ask them to do this, and if they agree to do it, then they can enter into an agreement. My experience has been that the fewer agencies that are involved, the better, and the fewer pieces of paper that have to go between people, the better. And if it can be electronically done, that's even better. So that time is of the essence in this sort of thing, because this happens like that. And we're going to hear from Mr. DeChico in a minute, and he can give us some really firsthand knowledge of all of it. But, you know, we need to have a mechanism, and I thank you for showing me this, Mr. Little.
You're welcome.
It's not dated, so I don't know.
Yeah,
when
I do
it's-
have an executed copy, and I'm sorry, I took
That's
the
okay.
draft here. Yeah.
I don't know if Dr. Voorhees has seen this, but can you give that to Bill? Okay. You know,
So it hasn't been for, it's not that we didn't want to be able to issue the citations. It has taken a while to work with other agencies to determine who can, and we have accomplished that. And it's not that we didn't want to fully execute this law. That
Nobody's
was our
saying you didn't.
creation, so, yeah.
nobody's saying you didn't want to do it.
Yep.
Please be certain that
Thank
you
you.
understand we're not saying that. What we're saying is that we have a law, and we need to make certain that we know who's responsible for enforcing it. Because when we have constituents call us and say, you know, I see these guys driving these cars, you know, they're picking the car up in front of Charleston, you know, and they're parking it on Central Avenue, you know, then I've got to be able to say, well, you should call whomever.
Right.
And, if the finance department people are only available 4 hours a night on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, that doesn't help us at dinner time on Wednesday night. So we talk, when Major Marcus is talking about coordinating with his agency, and if we can talk about coordinating with DOT, and I don't know, Mr. Petro, if we would need some sort of, and between you and Mr. Rhodes, if we would need some sort of amendment to the legislation that would specifically allow or reference enforcement by these agencies or whomever. Is that how it would work? I mean,
How it works with the ECB enforcement mechanism is that you have to be a special enforcement officer, a code enforcement officer, a police officer. I think those are the three categories, in order to issue an ECB violation.
can we
In order to-
classify it as another type of violation which would broaden?
Well, we
the-
don't have any other, we have the Civil Citation Authority as well, but that there's similar restrictions on the type of persons that are allowed to issue those citations.
Are Colonel Cason's people included in that?
They are special parking enforcement officers. They're a different animal and their authority is limited. So,
Can we classify this in some way?
yeah, we
Default-
can look at that. I'm not sure.
I mean, if we could classify this to fall in some way under the parking enforcement folks, that would let up on the police department a little bit. It would let up on finance, but it would give you guys, people that are on the street all the time and people with whom you work on a daily basis, if we could give the authority to DOT.
Yeah, we've looked into this a little bit. The three classifications, the code enforcement officers, the special enforcement officers, and I forget the third one, but the police officers. There's a special enforcement officer needs to be appointed or commissioned by the police commissioner. Now, our traffic enforcement officers are already commissioned by the police commissioner by virtue of there being special parking enforcement officers. So one thing we can do is look into seeing if we can contact the police department and see if they'd be willing to extend their commission to serve them as special enforcement officers. And if that works out,
The other thing is, how broad is their current power? If their current authority is broad enough, perhaps they,
well, so in that case, they wouldn't be operating as special parking enforcement officers, they'd be special enforcement officers.
no, I'm saying
Yeah.
unless their parking enforcement authority would extend to this, I'm not sure. I
Yeah,
just don't
that's
know.
my question, is can this valet law be within the purview of parking enforcement? Because it really is about parking. I mean, that's what it is. It's valet parking. So the question is, if we can find some sort of, whether, between or among, David and Elena and Barbara, your three agencies talking, if we can find some way that this enforcement of this valet parking would fall within the purview of Colonel Cason's folks in parking enforcement, then we would have, without question, the enforcement tools, because those people are out there all the time. And so, her folks, all you'd need to do would be to train them, and you're training them anyhow, because they do your permit parking and they do all the other stuff. You could just add this to the training, and I would think that it's, I think if you stretch somehow between permit parking and valet, I would think there's some sort of nexus there that would create the authority. I mean, what do you think about that, Mr. Little?
I can't speak for the Department of Transportation.
What do you think about it from the parking authority?
From the parking authority's perspective, the more people helping us with this, the better.
Okay. All right. Ms. Etkick, do you think you would be willing to see if you guys can do this?
Sure thing.
Okay. That's Mr. Petro,
happy to work with transportation to make it, work as
Okay.
quickly as
Can
possible.
you work it and then let us know if you need something further from us legislatively, let us know, and then we can tweak it legislatively.
Sure.
And if you don't, then if you can just give us something in writing, something to the committee, and then give it also to the appropriate agencies so that we know, and then we can make it public so that people will know how they do.
Sure.
Does that work?
Yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Little? Okay.
Thank
you, Pete. I want to bring up the public. That's it. Mr. DeChico.
Councilman Kraft, I want to thank you for having this hearing. Members of the council, thank you for taking time to listen to me.
Up into the mic.
I have a ton of things, I would like to say. Valet started in Little Italy about 20 years ago. It was supposed to be on a 6-month trial basis. And this is where we are today. About 6, 7 years ago, I did not know Mr. Little, but I started getting involved in some community things that were going on, especially with parking, living in Little Italy. It's like crazy. Valet was put in, other restaurants wanted it, there was no fees charged. It seemed like any and all businesses who wanted a passenger loading zone sign, they were put up. Illegal activity in my eyes, because even a dog in Baltimore City needs a license. None of these valet operators were required to have a license. They could do any and everything they wanted. And no matter what me or the community or anybody would say, nothing was done. Thanks to Mr. Little over the years writing the law and all the legislative people involved in it also. The law is written, but there is no way to enforce it. I've been involved with Little Italy in this valet since the start of it. I have some serious questions that I still do not have answers to. I've worked with each and every agency, including the parking authority. I've emailed numerous people for any and all kind of helps. Little Italy, the restaurants applied for valet. I was able to have letters written to have a protest hearing. The protest hearing was for Aldo's restaurant, not all of the restaurants. When we met with Mr. Latuca, for some reason, unbeknownst to me, he wanted to include all the restaurants at one particular time, except at the end, La Scala and La Tavola was left out, which is no problem at all. My complaint to Mr. Latuca or DOT was the applications for all the restaurants in Little Italy were incomplete and inaccurate. He listened to us. He turned all the applications back over, I'm assuming to the parking authority, to give back to the restaurants to update all the information in there. Each and every time the applications were updated, I had asked Brian Thompson, which he freely did. He emailed me all the folders, and we were going to have a second hearing in August of 2014. The problem was all the applications, once again, were incomplete and inaccurate. Mr. Latuca listened to us, but as time went on, he granted the valet zones to the restaurants in my neighborhood. I couldn't say anything about it. He's smarter than me, but the applications still to this day contain incomplete, inaccurate information. As time went on, October, I think it was the 24th, I think it was a Friday, they wind up putting up signs in Little Italy for the first time saying there is a valet zone at a particular area. They put it up for Chiparelli's restaurant, and all the restaurants in Little Italy had asked for 20 feet. All the hearings that we went to, we were under the impression that all the restaurants had asked for 20 feet. Chiparelli signs were put up It got me very upset. They didn't do anything. They left the signs the way they were. They say it's 35 feet. Unbeknownst to the community, they just put the signs up. When I had questioned somebody via email, the parking authority via email, well, we determined that it was going to cause more problem if we reduced the footage that they had. That was not the agreement. As time went on, Aldo's and Chow Bellows was the last two restaurants to get valet zones or pay their fees. I wrote to Mr. Latuca again. Because of me, he gave them a drop-dead date of when they had to pay. They put the signs up, and again, Chow Bellows was reduced to one zone, but Aldo's remained again with the parking spaces that he had in the beginning. It supposedly came out to 31 feet. Once again, all the applications said 20 feet. Going back to the application process, all the applications, Mr. Tana has files that are not the same files that I have, but they were the information that was sent over. All the applications are missing letters of indemnification for the city, relieving them of any responsibility if anybody out there does anything wrong with the valet services. All the applications are missing a signed agreement between the host and the valet operator, so they're in agreement on what is supposed to happen. Community associations were not notified. They said that they were. I brought each and every one of these points up to the parking authority in each and every one of my emails, and it can all be documented. There are certain agencies that have all these emails, and they still didn't do anything. The parking authority, they took care of the paperwork. They should have never got to the Department of Transportation in my eyes, but they were forwarded to them unbeknownst to all the work that I had did or tried to do to try to help them. Believe it or not, it's not a battle, it's not a war. You have to live there to fully understand what is going on in an RPP area that has valet that is not being enforced by anybody. We talked about Aldo's and we talked about Elite. There's a serious question or a serious doubt in my mind that Elite is even working for Aldo's. Do not know. Aldo's, Elite is, the license is listed to a Joseph Lloyd, the president of Elite. Whether it really makes that much of a difference is a guy by the name of Cusimano. In August of 2014, I had made a number of phone calls to Mr. Brian Thompson. I was watching Aldo's. He did not get in. Like I say, this was later on in the evening. I do not fault him for not returning the phone calls to me, and I had wound up putting out emails. But that Friday, he wound up coming, not him, Donald Lungo and an associate wound up coming down to my neighborhood. They saw me in the area, and they observed what I was saying about Aldo's, and they wanted to know what I thought they, could do. Number one, the Fleet Street garage for Aldo's is about a quarter of a mile away. It's impossible for one person or two people to be able to valet cars to that site. Henry Raymond, the finance department, went to the original lot that they said that they were using. I think the address is 1402. It was a private lot. He was supposed to have issued them citation or fines for running a parking facility without paying the proper dollar amount. Number two, there's another valet company down there. It's MNW Valet. The law says the licenses are not transferable. The owner of MNW, Harold McClellan, wound up passing away. I'm not a ghoul. I notified the parking authority saying, really, there is no legitimate valet service down there. Mr. McClellan passed away. Prior to his demise, he wound up marrying somebody, and they're under the impression that she is running his company. It's been over 6 months since his death. M&W, Harold McClellan, is still listed as the valet operator. The law specifically says the license is not transferable. No matter what information I give to anybody, it goes in one ear and out the other. If it wasn't for Councilman Kraft, we wouldn't be here, and I apologize for keeping you guys on the clock for all this time that we are here. Mr. Little said that it's a process that they're going through. The law says that temporary licenses or permits were supposed to be issued. They were not, because he did not think it was fair. But downtown business section or central business district was supposed to be the first valet area that they were going to implement. The records that I have show there's a restaurant on Marketplace who filed for a permit September 2013. They never paid anything until just recently. They were granted a valet parking zone February of this year. Prior to that, so it's 18 months that they've been on the streets, not paying anybody a cent. This was the first area that was supposed to be, you know, for this to be implemented on, and nobody's collecting any money. At one time, I contacted Ms. Joan Pratt's office. I asked the auditors to get involved with the parking authority because of fees not being collected. I do not know under the law whether they have the right to make a determination to say, well, we're just not going to collect because we don't think it's fair. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars that could have been in the city's pocket to help implement this and pay for the overtime or whatever you guys, however you guys wind up getting paid here. So number one, Little Italy, we have, in my opinion, two rogue valet operators. M&W does not have a license because the man had passed away. Elite, I question on who's running the valet service there. We talked about Councilman Kraft in August at a Southeastern police meeting. We had asked the major to start enforcing valet. He didn't know. One of the questions that you guys were speaking about was the valet operators. Nobody's talking about finding the host. Who do you find? Do you do the host, the business owner, for allowing this to happen, or do you go after the valet guy because he's the one parking the cars? If they had that signed agreement the way the law says it's supposed to be, you might not have this problem. Who is the parking authority, police department, environmental, control board? Who's going to be getting the citation?
Okay, hold one minute, Michael, just a minute, and let me see if we can't get a couple answers to some of these, if we can, or at least get them sort of lined up so that we can get back and get some answers, okay? So, your mic's live, Pete. And these are in no particular order.
Okay.
Okay. So M&W, this is the owner was Mr. McClellan. Mr. McClellan has passed away.
Yeah, and that, I may have to refer to some other members here of the Parking Authority, but from what I understand, it's in the corporate name, and it's not in his personal name, and so they are still licensed to do business in the state. Is that correct, generally? Yep.
Okay, so the license is not held by Mr. McClellan, it's held by the M&W Corporation, is that
I
Mr.
don't know the
Rhodes?
exact name of the corporation, but yes.
Okay, okay, so that answers that question.
1 second,
Wait a minute.
please.
Okay, well, just hold on, you can look at
Okay.
that, because I don't want to get in debate, I'm just trying to get some stuff cleared. Elite, you're investigating Elite.
Yes.
Okay. Who is ultimately responsible? I mean, if the valet operators people are parking the cars illegally, then that would be on the valet operator.
Right.
Okay. If the host knew that the valet operator were parking the cars illegally and did not in some sense, reprimand them or say, if we catch you doing this again, you're out, or something like that, then the host would be liable.
Right, I think so. Looking to our general counsel as well.
I mean,
too.
where does the buck ultimately stop? At the host or at the operator, or, I mean, at the end of the day, who's the person that is,
At the end of the day, it could be both,
could be, okay.
right?
Okay,
And both could lose their licenses. One, the valet operator's permit, valet operator's license, and then the other, the valet parking zone permit.
okay. And this is a question that's come up in a lot of different locations, and I've actually observed it myself, and that is the length of these zones. My understanding is that the zone is 20 linear feet. And so, but some of these zones are 30 feet, some are 35 feet. Some people are getting 40 feet and are paying for 2 zones. Some people are getting 30 feet and paying for 1 zone. There's no consistency. Can somebody explain, because I mean, really, if it's 20 feet,
So if I don't have someone from On Street who marks these in, but typically when we're putting in any zone, a valet parking zone, passenger loading zone, or truck loading zone, and it is very close to the intersection, we don't want to leave such a small space between the zone and the intersection that somebody tries to park there in an unsafe manner. So many times we'll call for installation of a zone that then extends to that legal limit to the intersection so that nobody is enticed to park in an illegal and unsafe manner at that corner.
I understand what you're saying. It lends itself to unfair application in some instances.
But if it's unsafe, then we don't want to do it.
Right. Or we get better enforcement. If somebody's parking in an improper way, right?
But it's, having observed been in parking now for 30 years.
Right.
That enticement, when somebody sees that extra gap between a zone and the intersection, and you're in an area where, parking demand is heavy as well, too, that does happen, and then people get upset about getting those citations and will park in a manner that's clearly unsafe.
In an area like Little Italy, and then I'm going to go back to Mr. DeCicco. In an area like Little Italy, how many spaces are being shared?
How would that? 0 currently. Yep.
0?
None.
So we're taking up a lot of space down there for valet. Where we have restaurants like next to each other, like where we have Amici's and
Amici's does not have valet, does not
they don't have
want
it.
valet.
Chipperelli's.
Chipperelli has their own, each
Yeah.
Chipperelli has their own zone. The only ones who have a little bit more than, what they had asked for. The way I understand the law, the minimum space that
20
for a
feet.
valet zone is 20 feet.
Right.
If you want 40 feet, you have to pay, it's $60 for each.
No, what I was talking
linear
about where
foot.
you have 2 or 3 restaurants in a row, rather than giving each of them 20 feet or ending up taking up 70 feet or 75 feet, why weren't you just using 40 and having them share the expense or something like that?
But then it would have been, we have to get them together to consider sharing the expense. And I would say, in terms of rolling this out across the city, it has reduced the overall number of valet parking zones because some of the valet, those venues have opted out, given that they knew they couldn't meet the requirements or just didn't want to pay the cost.
Or you have, I use Charleston as the one because they constantly move their sign. They have the sign on Exeter Street, and depending on what day of the week it is, sometimes that sign is like 2 cars in, and then other times that sign is all the way up to the entrance of the garage where they can like stack 4 cars there. So, and they have people there. So, anyway, let me have
Mr.
Council and
Chair.
Inspector ask their question,
Mr.
and
Chair,
then we'll go back
Where
to
you have that gaggle of restaurants,
Right.
Does one license suffice for the $500 license fee? Is that only need one then?
I did not understand.
The question was, where you have a group of restaurants like that, does one license suffice? And one license gets one space. I mean, one.
No, I meant the license. Doesn't the valet parking company have to have a $500 a year license?
Yeah, a valet operator has to apply for a valet
If that operator is
permit.
serving a gaggle of restaurants, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, it can reduce the cost for the restaurants as a whole if they were to combine as well, too.
As long as they're all using that same valet parking company.
Right, and if they were to share the same zone as well, too, it would ultimately reduce their costs, but then it's a question, that the restaurants themselves have to consider, do we want it separately, albeit, at a greater cost to ourselves individually, or do we want to combine and share a cost that might be lower for each of us combined?
Okay. Mr. Chica.
Okay. I had gone to Commissioner Batts numerous times questioning on why the police are not enforcing the laws in Baltimore City. They swear to an oath to uphold the laws, no matter, they're not judge, jury, they just have to follow the law. Supposedly, they can write civil citations. Mr. Batts, I'm sorry, he has not gotten back to me. He had turned it over to his legal secretary, Mrs. C. Gree, Monday after I had talked to Mr. Tanner to see what his record what records he has. I saw Commissioner Batts on the streets. He told the people he was with to let it happen, somebody to get back to me on what they were going to do. That I do not know. I went to Internal Affairs. I'm sorry. I want this thing over with so bad so I can get on with my life. I have hundreds of hours into this, the way the parking authority does, and we're still in the same position we are from day one before the law was written. You're collecting money, but nobody is doing anything about it. When I had spoken to Internal Affairs, somebody was I forgot exactly what he was. He told me to go to the liquor board, that the liquor board could do it. And the things, the articles were 2 point something, and there's a zoning thing for the liquor board and safety, the noise in the neighborhood. They're not following laws. Mr. Shelton, he's here. He was supposed to get back to me. He's here. You guys had spoken.
Right.
Well, once again, you have liquor board inspectors out there. If they're causing harm to the neighborhood, go against their damn liquor license. You might not be able to issue a fine to them, but you'll have them in front of the liquor board explaining what's going on, and the liquor board can issue fines that way also.
Well, my understanding, and please correct me, Mr. Jones, if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that they'd have to be charged with the violation, and then they'd have to be found to have committed the violation before the liquor board could go against them. Is that correct?
Yes, we would have to bring them in for a hearing in front of the liquor board chairman, and then they would be issued a fine at that point, but that's not solving the problem immediately. That's after the fact.
Right. They would have had to have been in violation of that code, because then that which triggers the liquor board violation,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so they've got another step before they can get to the liquor board.
Well, that's okay. Once again, once somebody thinks their liquor license is in jeopardy, they'll take this thing seriously. I think this is what you're going to wind up having to do anyway. You have to find out. After this meeting, if anybody wants to take a walk home with me, on the way down, I'll show you all the violations, one right after the other. Nobody's enforcing. And as we're talking about the downtown business, like I say, I might as well get it all out of my crawl. Pier 5, Pier 6. One whole side is nothing but valet. The valet law says you need operators. there's nobody there during the day. It's turned into private parking, and no matter what you try to do, you cannot get enforcement, to go there. Prior to that, there was no parking allowed at all except near the restaurant as a small valet zone. Everything was a fire lane. It's amazing how the fire lane disappeared and the city gave them valet there. If you go on Water Street where Roof Chris is, once again, they applied for a license in September of 2013. They have not spent one penny until February of this year, for a current license. That's all the revenue that was lost to the city. But if you go down there now, before the valet signs are put up from 7 a.m. to 3 a.m. the next morning, it's no parking at all, 5 minutes. Now, all of a sudden, they're going to wind up putting valet zones there. Can they legally use those streets there? Because Frederick Street's has the parking lot right there. On the way up, they're putting out the parking cones right now, saving all Water Street for God knows what the heck, they do. The valet zones are supposed to be used for nothing but valet zones. Little Italy is not doing as well as it used to do over the years. Some of the restaurants are closing way before or time before their hours of operation for the valet zone is up. It's not being mean. I can be mean and say, hey, they should be there. But the businesses are allowing taxi cabs to use it as a taxi stand. That's not what the zone is meant to be. On Sunday afternoons, the signs say that they're not supposed to start until 5 o'clock in the evening. This is how I originally got involved in this. Nobody wanted to stop them at any given time, the police or anybody. They're still coming in early on a Sunday. They put the signs up. People do not know, and you could park there yourself for free and go and get something to eat. But no, they have the sign there. People are intimidated. They think they have to pay for valet.
Well-
If they're supposed to start at 5, they should start at 5, not at 1 in the afternoon or 2 in the afternoon.
Well, hopefully, if we can get this issue clarified, as we were talking about it before, with the Department of Transportation, with the Law Department, and with the Parking Authority, so that we can allow the traffic enforcement, the parking enforcement officers, Colonel Kason's people, to do this work, then I think that this problem, while it may not be solved 100%, one, we'll know who the enforcement people are, and two, I mean, Michael, as well as anybody, that when Colonel Kason's people come into the neighborhood, if your car is 3 inches over where it says no stopping or no parking, you're going to get a ticket. If the sign says you're not supposed to be here, you're going to get a ticket. I mean, they give you absolutely no discretion, and they're not allowed to give you any discretion. So I think, if we can get a clear statement that this enforcement falls within the purview of their authority, then I think that we're going to have the tool that not only you need, but everybody else needs, because the issue that you're dealing with, and I pointed at Charleston, but if you go to Harbor East, you can see it in Harbor East all the time, because they have 1 or 2 spots that they paid for. So I think one of them has 3 spots that they paid for, but they line the cones up all along, on Lancaster Street, on Exeter Street. They're just lined up, and then people that work there park their cars behind the cones. So, if we can get this clarified with regard to the enforcement people, I think that we'll be a long way to solving this problem.
One other quick solution may be, and I know nobody is going to do it, someone who is a constant problem. I think there's enough of witnesses in this room here to say Aldo's is. Just go down and take the damn signs down. It won't cost a fine. You violated too much. We're tired. The signs are down. And give them, 3 months? And we'll come back, but you want to play? We'll play with you. It won't cost anybody anything. Just take the signs down.
Well, we
It
could
may
start
hurt his
that
business.
through regulation, through the parking authority and DOT could do it through regulation, I would imagine. And if they can't, then we could do it legislatively. I mean, in terms of how you administer your administrative penalties.
Well, I think I already noted that they've been warned, and we have warned that that is one penalty that we may take if they don't stop.
Okay.
But that's warned, was it in August when Donald Longo and whoever the other guy was it January? Was it because of my freedom of information request to get the paperwork for elite parking that he parked, what was it, one car during Christmas?
Right.
In Little Italy? Is that crazy, you know?
Yeah.
I
I mean,
when does it take
It's
effect?
got to be swift. It's got to be swift.
We have
And
to give
that
them
would throw
warnings.
everybody.
Yeah, because, you know, I've been a valet, sorry.
Mr. Little, then Councilman Henry.
So I've actually run valet operations myself too, and I know that it can be difficult to control the people that are working for you at a particular location. And I know that even at my own operations when I was in the private sector, I appreciated warnings when my valets were not operating correctly, and maybe a number of reasons why they don't. Either they're lazy or they're looking to park the car closer so that they get a bigger tip. There are all sorts of motivations for that. But as the operator then, I would warn them if those individuals that were doing that didn't stop, fire them, bring on people who would do it. And so I do think that we need to work with them to a degree. We can't drop the nuclear bomb day one. We shouldn't. We should warn them. We should give them ample notice. We should continue to observe them. We should continue to take calls from observant citizens who see abuse and investigate those abuses as well too. And then at the appropriate time, drop the bomb.
Councilman Henry.
I just had a question. You were talking about how in some of the cases they start using the valet zone before it goes into effect.
Yes.
Are there not hours of operation on the sign?
The signs say 5 to 10, 5 to 11, 5 to midnight. Years ago, it was a passenger loading zone sign from 5 to 12.
But the sign clearly says this is when it's in operation.
Is when it's in operation.
So what are they doing to use it ahead? I mean, if I say this in terms of, is it just that they are intimidating people from parking there, or are they actually physically stopping them from parking there?
On the weekend, on Sunday, probably the businesses in Little Italy are starting to shut down around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the evening. Sabatino's usually stays open to midnight. You probably have the diners coming into the area a whole lot earlier, starting 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Sure.
And there's more customers during that period of time.
But I'm saying, I mean, in terms of if I come there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I see a space in front of, and
It's
because we're
yours.
picking on Aldo's, I'll continue to pick on Aldo's. I see a space in front of Aldo's that says valet parking 5 p.m. to whenever, and it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
You're free to park there.
I'm going to pull in there and I'm going to park and I'm
You're
going to be
gonna park.
happy and I'm going to get out and I'm going to go eat.
Correct.
But what are they doing to stop me from doing that?
They're not doing anything. They're putting their valet signs up saying valet. They're putting the valet sign up in the street. People automatically assume that valet is in operation, that they cannot park there, even though the signs say your eyes are focused on the human being, not on the sign. And like I say, who's going to enforce this? I don't know. Like I say, it's going over my head, and I apologize for even making that kind of mistake.
That's okay, but
I still would like to know from the parking authority the incomplete and inaccurate information that the businesses in my neighborhood got away with. It to this day, it makes no sense. And why are the letters of indemnification missing? Why is not a signed agreement between the host and the operators on file, whether M&W is a corporate name or whatever his name?
Let's do this. Mr. Little, can you provide to the committee copies of the files on all of the present valet contracts?
It'll be extensive because there are quite a few, but we certainly can.
I have this list here. There's like 56
56 current.
56?
Yep.
Can you provide that to us?
Sure.
Okay. And then wherever they're not complete, then we can follow up, okay?
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. DeChico, anything else?
When is an answer coming on the enforcement?
Well, hopefully
This
we'll
is-
have an
this
answer
is
on
a
the
2
enforcement within the next couple of days, and as to, as to where this authority is, because if it's something that we already have and it already falls within the purview, then we just need something in writing that says that this is within your purview, can do it, and then, what do you call it? Ms. Zetkick will contact Colonel Kason, and they'll go to work. Yeah, I mean, what'll happen, Mr. Little will have to talk with Colonel Kason about how it gets enforced, but they will do that, but then it will be the traffic enforcement folks, the parking enforcement folks, and they will be there to do it.
Do I
So,
go through 911 or 311?
I would imagine 311?
We'll let the committee know once that's
We'll,
established.
we'll get it up. We'll nail it down, and we will publish it on the council website, and we'll publish it on our website, because I think that's something that has general knowledge to the entire public, because this is not just a problem in Little Italy. It's a problem for
It's-
everyone that deals with.
Like I say, I can take you now and
Right.
show you all the abuses, just in the small area that I travel.
Well, Mike, we've been fighting it for a couple years, so if it's another couple of weeks or a month, hopefully we'll have it resolved.
I just hope it's no longer than that, because, I'm tired the way these people are tired of, hearing from me or hearing about me.
I love hearing from you, Michael. Okay.
Okay, thank you for your help.
Is there any, Mr. Little, before I see if there's anybody else that wants to
I
testify?
would just like to take exception to one comment that there's been no progress made at all
No,
here.
there has
There's been
been.
significant progress made.
And in fairness, that's true.
Thank you.
Ms. Blatterman? You can just pull it down. It'll come right down. Just keep pulling.
Thank you.
Just identify yourself.
First of all, thank you so much for having this hearing, and I appreciate you more than I ever have.
That's a big compliment.
I know, isn't that great? I'm not going to be long. I'm going to be very brief.
Can you identify yourself? So,
I'm Gia Blatterman, from Little Italy. Anyway, I'm here tonight on behalf of myself and our board and our community, because we've been having this tete-a-tete now for 8 or 9 years, and I think we were instrumental in getting this, help Peter getting this passed. The only thing, I know we're picking on Aldo's, and that's not fair, because everybody is.
We just had the numbers
everybody.
on
I
them.
know. I'm just saying it's not fair, because I'm here also as a business and resident kind of a person. I'm trying to be on both sides of the issue here, because the business have been suffering quite a bit, and they need as much help, but then the residents need the respect from the businesses. What and Michael and I speak a lot about this, what really upsets me is that the legislation has pitted the residents against, or friends against friends, because you're afraid to go and be here tonight and be against your neighbor, but you almost have to, because if there's no enforcement, that leaves it up to us. And then we become the bad guys, when we're absolutely correct. Not all the restaurants have valet down there, because not all of them need it or want it, but then sometimes when the valet operator and / host does not act properly, it affects the other businesses also. It's not just the residents. So I'm here to please help us. Without the enforcement, we have nothing. And I don't even think you should have taken a dime from anyone unless there was enforcement, because that's just money that was sent in and there's nothing being done about it. And I don't think that's fair to anybody. So, and also, the only recourse that we have is to go against the host. The only time we're going to have a say is when the host comes to apply again for their space. We have to go fight the host, our neighbor, and say, no, they don't understand that we're really not fighting them, we're fighting their valet operators. Because nothing has ever been an issue in this bill against the valet operator. So that's made it very difficult for us. So I'm asking that before we have to go back again in April, May, or whenever their time is up, to please correct it so that we can all live happily down there if we can try. The other thing too is that the space, and I agree with the councilman, Little Italy is different than most of the other places because we're all in one little community, one street, basically. I really, really believe that if the parking authority would take a little bit of time and study it, one restaurant wouldn't think that he or she could park their vehicle there all night because they paid $1,200. I have pictures that are sent to me in the middle of the night of cars, their own personal cars being parked there or angled because their car is half parked there and you can't get the valet vehicle out. If you would take the time and mandate it, just come in and say, you know what, you're not going to have valet in front of your restaurant only. This is going to be one block here for everybody to deliver, one block to pick up, and give us that honor, that privilege, because I think we all need it. We really do. It's not fair that we should have a little spot in the middle of the block where you have to, it's not 20 feet really is not enough when, I know it's too much for the residents, but it's not enough sometimes for the vehicle. And so they're angled in. I got 3 pictures on my phone. If you, from another restaurant in the middle of the night says, you know, there's this angle parking now. The point is, if we can get together and decipher a way where it could help everybody and not have to necessarily be in front of each restaurant, take 4 or 5 spots on one side and the other, let everybody have valet.
And it may be, Gia, that, you know, we had to take what we called a holistic approach to the angle parking. So when we were getting, you know, at one point we had to get so many signatures in order to put it in, and then we just decided that in certain areas, if we were going to put it in, we were going to put it in the entire area because you just couldn't go on a block-by-block basis and have it that way. And maybe we have to look at the valet, that when you're in a concentrated area like that, or O'Donnell Square or something like that, that you would say, okay, this will be the pickup area, and this will be this, and you know, if there's going to be valet and you're going to use valet, you're going to pitch in.
Everybody,
And
correct.
if you're, you know, so whoever's offering valet will pay 1/3 or 1/4, depending on the number of people that are offering valet, and that will be where the valet is. And if you don't use that spot, you can't have it.
Exactly.
And then the same thing for pickup. So maybe we need to look at that as something in those concentrated areas, as you're saying.
Yes.
So it's a thought, you know.
Well, I appreciate it, and I think if it's more or less mandated by the city, then we have no problem, because I know everybody wants their individual right to have their customers in front of their restaurant, but I think it would help the community too, then people would walk around a little bit, you know, and make it more safe, because people are out there a little bit.
Right.
Anyway, thanks, I don't want to take up much
Thank
more
you
of your
very
time,
much.
but Ricky, I need to see you.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I'll call you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Is
to
there,
see you,
is
Gio.
there anyone else that would like to testify on this resolution tonight? Anybody else? Yes. Is there a motion on the, and on this here, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who aren't familiar with our procedure, this is an informational hearing. So we have a motion, and all that motion does is confirm that we in fact had the hearing, and we will report back to the council that we had the hearing. So is there a motion at this time?
Move a favorable report on City Council Bill 15-0200R.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Henry, seconded by Councilman Branch. Okay, Councilman Kraft votes yes. Councilwoman Clark is absent. Councilman Kern is absent. Councilman Henry?
Yes.
Councilman Branch? Yes. Okay. 3 votes in the affirmative, no negative, 2 absent, no abstention. This confirms that we had this hearing here tonight, and we will report this fact out at the next council meeting, which will be Monday, March the 2nd. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending the hearing. Please check the area around your seat to make certain that you've everything that you brought with you. We'll be closing the room shortly, and we ask you to exit promptly to the first floor main entrance. Once again, thank you for visiting City Hall. The Judiciary and Legislative Investigations Committee of the Baltimore City Council stands in recess. Please be careful driving home. Thank you.